with me, I have Sean Dolan. He completed his Applied Associate's degree in IT and Web Design in 2007, and then also completed his bachelor's degree in Computer Information Sciences with a major in Cyber and Network Security in 2016. Thanks for joining me, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate you having me today.
Awesome. So we will go ahead and jump into the questions, learn a little bit about what you've been doing since you've graduated. So where are you currently working? What's your job title?
Yeah, so today I'm a sales engineering manager at Fortinet. Fortinet recently acquired the company I was working at called Lacework. I love what I do. It's definitely fun. Every day I get to meet new people and see what kind of problems they have.
Yeah. So what does Fortinet do? What customers do they serve?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to work for two of the biggest conglomerate networking companies and cybersecurity companies there are, right? So I worked for Cisco, prior to this, and now I work for Fortinet. Fortinet really is, they started with kind of like what they call FortiGates and FortiSwitches, which is going to be your firewalls and switches. And then they kind of migrated into protecting the cloud, protecting all the other different assets that customers have. So that really tied into my cybersecurity background, and I was really excited to join.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in your job, with your job title, what are some of the daily tasks that you have?
Yeah, so day to day, before acquisition, I was primarily managing a team of five, right? So now I've gone more back to a individual contributor slash, player coach. So as of today, I'm doing demos, demonstrations for customers. I'm also doing things within the like proof of value, proof of concept. So like installing stuff within customers' environments, whether it be hardware or software, to meet the solutions that solve the pain that they have, right? Whatever problems they're trying to solve, like going in and architecting a solution to it, and then trying to help them get to the end goal, right? Which is what is happy path for you? Is it being able to sleep at night, not having your customers' data stolen or exfiltrated by a cyber criminal, like whatever that thing might be, helping them get to that and harden their environments.
Great. What's your favorite thing about your job?
Oh gosh, it really is the people, right? I have genuine curiosity, so I like to ask a lot of questions, and in my job, it gives me the ability to talk to new people almost every day, where I'll go in and it's, tell me a little bit about what you do, right? And I'll learn about customers that are in retail or banking, fintech, health tech. It doesn't matter, right? It could be manufacturing. And then all of them have different challenges or what we call in sales pains, right? So all those pains allude to, what are they trying to solve? What are the initiatives they have? And then really trucking forward to the solution. And that's the part that gets me excited is like once I've figured out what makes them tick, what, the next step is for them or the next target condition they might have, and then really just figuring out how can I build that with the solutions that we have to say, look, we're able to solve that for you, and this is how we can do it. And if we take this amount of time to get there, we'll be able to lock the doors, lock the windows for you, keep your customers' data safe, whatever that thing might be. And I love that part of it, right? Because it takes people from a very low place to really a very high bar, right? Where they can then say, look, I can now sleep at night. I've got less things to worry about, and you've been able to kind of help me supplement my team in a way that we all feel like we have confidence in the solution around us, and that's really what I get excited about.
Yeah, that sounds very rewarding. That's awesome. So, can you briefly walk me through your career history?
I'll give you the short version on the early years, but uh, I worked with my dad for a number of years. So he owned painting companies and light carpentry and things like that. And that's where I started. And unfortunately, because it was my dad's company, I kind of grew through the ranks very fast. But I also saw that as a hindrance, right? I love my dad to death, but at the same time, I had to also think about my future. So I went to another construction firm. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I was building Hampton and Holiday Inns. So as I was building them, I realized that, hey, I can make a lot of money doing this. And I was leading teams. I was at the point where we were doing everything from the footers up to the roofing and completing the buildings, right? But the challenge really was I started to think about it one day. I was out in the snow and I was like, it's cold. Like, why am I out here doing this? Well, like I could be doing something else, right? And then one of my buddies called me up and told me about, positions they had in the fintech space for a top five bank, and I was super interested. It did take me back a lot, right? So pay was significantly lower than I was making. I was already working my way up so high. So it was a really tough decision for me, but I had a kid on the way. I knew that I was starting to build a family. And I needed to make a change, right? So we sacrificed a couple of years, and then I blew those numbers away in the long run, which was helpful. But it was definitely tough up until that point.
Yeah. So when you graduated from ECPI, you got your applied associates in 2007, but there's a little bit of time in between your applied associates and your bachelor's degree at ECPI. Where were you at in your life before you decided to pursue your bachelor's degree in cybersecurity?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So what's funny is I started my career in a field I never thought I would start in, right? So I jumped into performance engineering and performance testing. What really came to be from that was, I really learned process in a big enterprise, how things work, right? And I knew I didn't always want to be a tester. I didn't always want to do performance engineering, but I got to learn so much about how applications work, how they communicate over networks, moving and migrating them to the cloud, right? And then taking a step back from that, really, you know, moved into another role. And what my boss told me is he's like, hey, we offer X number of dollars every year for you to go to school if you'd like to use it. He's like, I'm not telling you to go do it if you don't want to, but do it. And I was like, it's free money. Like, why wouldn't I do it? So that was the primary driver. I also realized that cybersecurity was an up and coming market, right? I realized that we had the threat of artificial intelligence, the threat of cloud, the threat of just big data lakes, and just disparate and geo disparate teams, right? Um, and all these different vectors in the threat landscape as a whole. I realize it's not going anywhere. There's only added complexity that's going to continue to grow at least through my lifetime, right?
So you decided you were going to get your bachelor's degree, but why did you choose ECPI as your school?
Oh, no, that's a great question. Actually, I went to a traditional college for a little while. It really came down to I realized I was a number, right? So my gen eds, I was in classes of about 300 people, auditorium style seating. I realized I couldn't get a question out. I couldn't get answers to the things that were probably fundamental that most people knew, but I didn't know. And candidly, I've been tinkering with computers since I was probably 10 years old, right? But that being said, there's a lot of fundamental knowledge and a lot of theoretical knowledge you just don't get unless you get, the hands-on with, a university like ECPI. So ECPI gave me the ability to get out of that big setting and really get hands-on tactical knowledge that I could then go use and do something or build things with. And that's what got me excited. I don't get excited about reading books and the theory and all the other stuff. I think that that's cool and I'm glad some people can do it, but me, like I have to get my hands dirty. That's the only way that I learn things.
When you think back to your time here at ECPI, what classes do you use most often in your career?
In the initial phases of my career, I think the biggest thing for me was just basic networking, right? So like how can I tell if an application is listening on a port or, how can I tell if, you know, a port is opened and I can reach my destination? All these different kind of things help me like stand up applications and then, obviously at that point in my career, performance test and manage that aspect of it. And I managed a lot of assets that were for performance testing. So setting up those systems, having them ready to go, then having all these different geo disparate agents across the globe that could test and help us kind of distribute that load. But then on the other side of it, really like especially today, now that I'm part of Fortinet, so having worked for Cisco and Fortinet, really it all comes down to networking for those companies. They're both very well vested in firewall switches, VLANs, cloud connectivity, and just how do you make sure that the people and things are connecting securely? How do you configure your network in a secure way? Like all those things as part of the cybersecurity, program at ECPI was super, super helpful, right? If I didn't have that base knowledge, that's one thing I was weak in. Like I could build computers, I could write programs, I had all that kind of background, but I never really had that fundamental, layer 7 networking knowledge.
Yeah, that's great. So, do you have any career searching advice for our students?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, if you get a no, don't let it knock you down. I think that's the hardest thing. I've been fortunate in my career to not have too many of those, but I've also been fortunate enough to be on the delivering end of so many of those, right? And so now being a manager, I think one of the things that I see, typically is people get let down, they get frustrated, and they think that there's something wrong with them. It's not necessarily the case, right? Like I think a lot of times it comes down to a company is going to buy any commodity, whether it be a human resource or, a pencil at the best price for the best quality, right? That's just how that's how the world works. If you have that piece of paper that, or that resume built out that shows, hey, Sean Dolan have the ability to do XYZ and here's how I can prove it. it takes you and puts you ahead of the rest of the pack. I think that, you know, nowadays you kind of get a mix of, some people get lucky. Some people get in and, they're able to kind of make their staple. I was not that. I needed that extra push. I needed that to make me competitive. Because I came from a construction background. Like what did I have to bring to the table? Hey, I tinker with computers in my spare time. It doesn't go very far, right? If I go in and say, hey, here's the projects that I completed as part of my, um, capstone at ECPI, and here's what I did and why I did it, you get out of ECPI what you put into it, right? Like find the fun, make it something you enjoy doing. Don't just build a network to build a network, build a network with purpose, right? Build a network to solve a problem. I think if you do it that way, or you think about it in that way, like what's the outcome, what's the value, it'll position you to articulate what is the business value you bring, not just what tactically can you do. And I think that's what differentiates most people in the market is they don't see the end, they see the beginning and they get stuck there.
Well, thanks for joining me, Sean. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thank you, Sarah.